Chapter 9. Waiting for the Rain. Adapted from Waiting for the Rain by Kamakshi Balasubramanian. I hope it rains at least today, Velu thought, as he opened his eyes. Velu was a farmer. The sun was beginning to rise, glowing crimson like fire. Velu looked at the sky. There was not a cloud. It doesn't look like there is going to be rain, he muttered to himself and got up. A rain or no rain, farmer wakes up early. Velu worked hard on his piece of land. Season after season he cultivated it, harvesting jawar one season and all the next. Throughout the year he worked, never thinking of rest or taking a holiday. It had been the same for 6 years, ever since he had got his own piece of land, but this year was different. At the end of summer, the rains did not come. Velu and his neighbors waited, but their waiting did not end. Days, weeks and months passed, and still there was no rain. The fields were brown, the soil hardened, crusted and cracked. Every day, the farmers hoped that the rains would come. Someone said, "We ought to sacrifice an animal, a goat. That will please the heavens and the heavens will send down rain." Velu did not agree. He said, "The rain came all these years without any such sacrifice. How will killing a goat bring rain?" He decided to go to the weather office in the city and talk to someone. But the people at the weather office could not really tell him when the rains would come. "We are not sure ourselves," they exclaimed. "It's strange that the rain is still not here." Velu walked back to the village, tired, thirsty and unhappy. He decided to rest for a while. He saw a large tree. Its shade was cool and inviting. As he sat down, he noticed that an old woman was also sitting there, sheltering from the sun. She was old, but her eyes were bright when she smiled. She looked at Velu and her smile grew wider. "What are you smiling at, Amma?" Velu asked. "Without the rains, there's nothing to smile about." Yes, you're right," the old woman said. She stopped smiling. "I wonder why this is happening," Velu began. "I have worked hard and honestly. Yet I am being punished. Without the rains no crop will grow. What will happen to me? How shall I feed my family?" he asked sadly. He was not speaking to anyone in particular, but the old woman thought that he was speaking to her. "Perhaps you have worked too hard," she said. "What do you mean?" "I have only done what any hard-working farmer would do. I shall work and never rest until I am too old. This is the first season in 5, no, 6 years that I have not sown, nor plowed." "Oh, it is hard not to be able to work," said Velu a little angrily. "But my son, that is what I am talking about. You have strength now. You can work without a break. But have you thought about the land? The earth works, too, when you plow, and sow, and plant. The earth has worked for years, in fact, thousands of years. The soil, the land, the earth. Shouldn't someone let the land rest a bit?" the old woman said, softly smiling. "Rest? Let the land rest? I don't understand." Velu looked at her, a little puzzled. "Yes, my son, that is the problem. You don't realize that the earth is old. But nature is a mother to all of us. To you and to me. And to the trees, the water and the soil. She takes care to give her children the rest they need," the old lady said. Value began to understand. When the rains don't come, you are unhappy. But that way the land is left alone. The land lies resting, still, and when the rains come, it will be fresh and ready for your crop. Go home, my son, nature knows a thing or two. Go home, she said, and got up. She walked away. After a while Value, too, got up and walked home. He thought about the land, his beloved piece of land. If the old woman was right, his land was perhaps resting peacefully, taking a break after years of cultivation. Perhaps she is right, he thought, as he approached the village. It was already evening. The sun was low in the sky. And what was that? Value felt tiny drops on his shoulder. He looked up. Yes. The clouds were gathering in the distance. It was growing dark. Soon there would be lightning, and thunder, and sweet, fragrant rain. Value ran home, laughing and happy. Understanding the text. A. Each of these sentences has a mistake in it. Correct the mistakes and write the sentences in your notebook as shown. 1. Value was a farmer who grew groundnuts and chickpeas. Answer. Value was a farmer who grew jawar and dal. 2. He got his own piece of land to farm 8 years ago. Answer. He got his own piece of land to farm 6 years ago. 3. The fields were green and well cared for. Answer. The fields were uncared for, the earth hardened, crusted and cracked. 4. The people at the weather office in the city knew when it was going to rain. Answer. The people at the weather office could not really tell him when the rains would come. 5. An old man was sheltering from the sun in the shade of a large tree. Answer. An old woman was sheltering from the sun in the shade of a large tree. 6. After talking to the old woman, Value got up and walked back to the weather office. Answer. After talking to the old woman, Value went home. B. Answer these questions. 1. Value looked at the sky. There was not a cloud. A. Why did Value look at the sky? Answer. A. He looked at the sky hoping for rain. B. What was the day going to be like? Answer. B. The day was going to be hot and dry. 2. Value and his neighbors waited, but their waiting did not end. A. What were Value and his neighbors waiting for? Answer. A. Value and his neighbors were waiting for the rain. B. Why did their waiting not end? Answer. B. Their waiting did not end because the rains did not drive. 3. Without the rains, there's nothing to smile about. A. Who was Value speaking to? Answer. A. He was talking to an old woman sitting under a tree. B. Why was there nothing to smile about? Answer. B. There were no rains, hence, the land was unplowed and not sowed. There was no work to do, so there was nothing to smile about. 4. The earth has worked for years, in fact, thousands of years. The soil, the land, the earth. Shouldn't someone let the land rest a bit? A. How has the earth worked for thousands of years? Answer. A. The earth has worked for thousands of years by taking care of everyone on it. B. Why does the woman say the land must be given a rest? Is she right? Answer. B. The land needs a rest so it can be fresh afterwards. It cannot work continuously. Yes, she is right. 5. Value ran home, laughing and happy. A. What makes Value happy in the end? Answer. A. Velu is happy because the sky is cloudy and there are tiny droplets of rain. B. What is expected to happen soon after? Answer: B. The rains are expected soon. Structures: the simple past tense and the past progressive tense. Read these sentences. Velu looked at the sky. Velu worked hard on his piece of land. The sun was beginning to rise, glowing crimson like fire. He was not speaking to anyone in particular, but the woman thought that he was speaking to her. In the first and second sentences, the highlighted words are in the simple past tense. In the third and fourth sentences, the highlighted words are in the past progressive tense. We learned that the past tense is used to show actions which happened in the past. These actions are over. We usually add d or ed to form the past tense. Some words have irregular past tense forms. We played in the park last evening. Play plus ed. I bought some fruits from the shop. Buy, bought. We also learned that the past progressive tense is used to describe actions that 1. Continued for some time in the past. 2. Were going on when another action took place. The past progressive tense is shown by the form was, were plus verb plus ing. I was riding my bicycle when it began to rain. Was plus ride plus ing. A. Match the two halves to make meaningful sentences. Write the complete sentences in your notebook. 1. All the people in the stadium knew the home team would win. 2. I was washing the dishes when the water stopped. 3. The sea was so rough last evening. 4. While they were climbing up, a few rocks rolled down the slope. 5. Due to bad weather they postponed the rocket launch. 6. She fainted while they were talking to the doctor. Complete these sentences using the simple past tense or the past progressive tense. Use the hints for help. 1. Hurt, while he play football, Tom, his leg. Answer: Tom hurt his leg while he was playing football. 2. Ring the telephone, while we watch the television, twice. Answer: the telephone rang twice while we were watching the television. 3. Wait, Vihu, for me. I arrive when, at the airport. Answer: Vihu was waiting for me when I arrived at the airport. 4. Listen carefully, the students, the teacher. While the use of tenses, explain. Answer: the students listened carefully while the teacher was explaining the use of tenses. 5. The park. I cycle / a strange noise passed when I hear. Answer: I was cycling past the park when I heard a strange noise. Words in use. Synonyms. A. The words in this table have roughly the same meaning. Write the word pairs in your notebook. 1. Old, ancient. 2. Happy, joyful. 3. Tiny, small. 4. Red, crimson. 5. Welcoming, inviting. 6. Tired, weary. 7. Shelter, protect. 8. Soil, earth. Now copy this paragraph into your notebook. Replace the highlighted words with words that have similar meanings. Look at the table on the previous page for help. As the sun set, the clouds were jet black and bright crimson. The farmer was weary and thirsty, but looking at the sky he could see that it was going to rain. Soon, there was a clap of thunder and he felt the first tiny drop of rain. He stopped beneath an ancient banyan tree for shelter from the rain. Gradually, the hard, cracked earth turned wet and soft. There was a joyful feeling in his heart, and as he ran home, he saw the welcoming glow of a lamp in the window. Phrasal verbs with up. Read these sentences. Rain or no rain, a farmer wakes up early. After a while, Felutu got up and walked home. We often use verbs with the word up. Sometimes this creates a new meaning. B. Use the correct verbs from the box with up to complete these sentences. Use the hints in brackets to help you. Round, look, stay, turn, put, mix. 1. I'd like to watch that wildlife program on the television tonight. May I please not go to bed late? Answer. Stay up. 2. I have something important to say. Please help me to gather together everyone on the team so that I can talk to them. Answer. Round up. 3. Be careful not to confuse these two words. They have quite different meanings. Answer. Mix up. 4. We thought he would come at 8, but he decided to came at 7. Answer. Turn up. 5. There is nothing we can do to change the bad weather. We just have to accept with it. Answer. Put up. 6. Please find these words in the mini dictionary.